So right now, the service sector makes up roughly 60% of India's entire GDP. I mean, for decades, that massive economic engine was built on a very simple premise.
Yeah, huge, highly educated, and, incredibly affordable human workforce.
Exactly. But what happens to a nation's foundational economy when human intelligence is suddenly no longer the cheapest software on the market?
Well, it creates this structural fracture that is almost impossible to prepare for. You aren't just looking at a few companies restructuring. I mean, you are watching an entire economic growth model become instantly obsolete.
Right. And welcome back to another deep dive. We are so glad you're here with us today because, everyone talks abstractly about AI taking jobs, but today we are locking onto a real-time, high-stakes case study.
Yeah, we've got a really fascinating stack of recent Indian media reports on the desk today. They're analyzing the immediate impact of AI on India's IT engineers, software developers, and, well, those massive network service sectors.
Yeah, everything from back-end coding to BPO outsourcing and customer service. And our mission today is to unpack this unfolding crisis through two highly evocative Hindi words that are just constantly popping up in the local media over there.
Right, and these two words act as perfect analytical lenses because one forces us to look at the micro individual reality of the worker, and the other forces us to zoom out to the macro geopolitical reality of the entire nation.
Okay, let's start with the micro view then, like the individual worker sitting at the desk. The first word dominating these reports is Chhatni. What is the exact context here?
So literally translated, Chhatni means screening, peeling, pruning, or layoffs. But in the current media landscape there, it's taken on a very specific structural meaning.
Like targeted layoffs.
Exactly. It refers to the aggressive hiring freezes and targeted structural layoffs that major IT and internet companies are executing right now. They are systematically pruning basic engineers, code testers, and customer support reps.
And that's because generative AI has fundamentally altered the software development lifecycle, right?
Yeah, completely. I mean, to understand why this specific pruning is so devastating, we have to look at how the Indian IT giants actually make their money. Companies like TCS, Infosys, Wipro.
Right, because their core business model for the last 30 years wasn't necessarily about, inventing the next iPhone. It was about scale and arbitrage.
Exactly. It was built on a low-cost, large-scale manpower leverage model. Like, if a Fortune 500 company in New York needed millions of lines of code tested for bugs, the Indian IT sector offered a compelling proposition.
Geographic arbitrage.
Right. They had this army of English-speaking engineering graduates who could execute those repetitive tasks for a fraction of the cost of hiring locally in the US or Europe.
And the revenue model itself is crucial here, I think, because these firms often operated on time and materials contracts, right? They build clients based on the number of hours worked by the number of bodies assigned to a project.
Yeah, more bodies meant more billable hours. If a software update required extensive QA testing, the IT firm had a financial incentive to assign 50 junior developers to just grind through it over a month.
But that is the exact mechanism that is breaking down right now. I mean, enter generative AI tools, context-aware coding assistants like GitHub Copilot, autonomous testing agents.
The math of human leverage completely collapses. Those repetitive tasks, writing boilerplate code, generating basic test scripts, they no longer take 50 junior engineers a month.
Wow, so an AI agent just generates the baseline code and runs the tests in seconds?
Exactly. And
If
the client isn't going to pay for 1,000 billable hours when the task takes 10 seconds of compute time. The IT firm only needs a handful of senior, highly experienced architects now.
Just to review the AI's output and integrate it.
Right. The vast middle layer of execution, the junior devs,
Yeah.
is suddenly redundant. That is the Chhatni. The baseline execution layer is being peeled away.
And for millions of Indian graduates, that baseline execution layer wasn't just a random job. According to these sources, landing a role at one of these major IT firms has historically been viewed as a golden bowl.
Yeah, it was the social contract. You get your engineering degree, you secure a guaranteed ticket into the middle class for your entire extended family.
But now, because AI is absorbing those specific routine cognitive tasks, the demand for entry-level roles is falling off a cliff.
The bottom rung of the economic ladder is just gone. Millions of recent graduates are staring at this shattered golden bowl, realizing that the workflow they trained for no longer exists.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. This sounds exactly like moving from an army of people digging a canal with shovels to just one person operating a massive AI excavator. The people with the shovels are suddenly left standing there.
That is a perfect analogy. The shovel is obsolete.
Oh, wait, is this just the normal cycle of tech evolution we've seen for decades? I mean, accountants panicked when Microsoft Excel came out. Weavers panicked at the mechanized loom. Hasn't the labor market always absorbed these technological shocks?
It has, but the difference lies in what exactly is being automated. The mechanized loom replaced physical muscle. The spreadsheet replaced raw calculation.
Right, but you still needed the accountant to decide what to calculate and why.
Exactly. The human still supplied the cognitive logic.
Hmm.
Generative AI is automating the cognitive logic itself. It's automating problem solving at scale.
Oh, I see. So it's not a tool that makes the junior developer faster. It's a replacement for the junior developer's thought process.
Right. Tools like Excel made accountants so fast that the cost of accounting plummeted, which actually increased the demand for accountants. But AI doesn't just make a coder faster, it eliminates the need for the code to be manually typed out by a human entirely.
Which strips out the crucial element of time. The market absorption you were talking about requires a slow rollout where workers have a decade to retrain. This is happening too fast, right?
Yeah, it's a sudden overnight collapse of the entry-level stepping stone,
Hmm.
and that creates a terrifying bottleneck.
Because if those entry-level roles vanish, how does anyone ever get the 5 to 10 years of hands-on experience required to become the senior architect who manages the AI?
They don't. And that is the true anxiety behind Chhatni. It is a structural block on human capital development.
Wow. And that individual bottleneck creates a massive math problem for the country as a whole. Because if millions of young people can't get that first job and the billable hours model collapses, what happens to the national economy?
Well, that forces us to zoom out to the macroeconomic picture, which brings us to the second word dominating the media landscape, Bhoochal.
Bhoochal, that translates to an earthquake or a severe stormy upheaval, right?
Yes. In this context, Bhoochal refers to the paradigm shift shaking the absolute foundation of India's multi-hundred billion dollar IT and software services industry.
It's the realization that the bedrock of their national economy is built on a fault line that has just ruptured.
Exactly.
Let's put some numbers to this earthquake to really understand the scale. The sources highlight that the service sector accounts for over 60% of India's GDP. Within that, software and web services are literally called India's national calling card.
Yeah, it is their primary foreign exchange earner.
Yeah.
It's the pillar holding up the modern Indian economy. And the local analysts use a fascinating concept to describe what AI is doing here. They call it a dimensionality reduction attack.
A dimensionality reduction attack. That sounds like something out of a sci-fi novel.
It is originally from science fiction, yeah, but economically it means attacking an opponent by dropping them into a lower dimension where their primary advantages are useless and they simply cannot survive.
Okay, so how exactly does AI force a dimensionality reduction attack on an entire country's economy?
Think about the 3D world where the Indian IT sector historically dominated. That world was defined by human scale, labor cost, and acceptable quality. In that space, India was unbeatable.
Right, they had the largest, cheapest, most educated talent pool.
Exactly. But AI flattens the world into two dimensions, compute power and energy costs. The global market is no longer asking, how many intelligent bodies can you throw at this problem cheaply?
The new metric is just how efficiently a company can deploy an AI model to solve it instantly.
Right. And in that 2D world of compute and energy, it doesn't matter if an Indian engineer costs $10 an hour. When an AI server sitting in Frankfurt can execute the same task for 2 cents a second.
Wow. So AI completely bypasses the need for human labor. Here's where it gets really interesting, because if the entire business model for the last 3 decades was essentially selling human hours for dollars and low-cost labor is no longer an advantage, does this whole multi-billion-dollar foundation just crumble?
It does, because geographic arbitrage has been replaced by technological arbitrage. It's a bottom-up extraction of India's core competitive edge, and this is why the word Bhoochal is so fitting.
The earthquake isn't just that the technology is changing, it's that the fundamental rule of the game has been rewritten overnight.
Yeah, India is being forced to play a game where their main economic resource, their massive population, is suddenly irrelevant to the production of digital value.
But wait, surely these massive IT firms see this coming, right? I mean, they have billions in capital. Can't they just pivot? Can't they just deploy the AI themselves, become 10 times more productive, and sell that new efficiency?
They are certainly trying, but pivoting an industry of this size isn't like turning a speedboat. It's like trying to turn a massive cruise ship into a fleet of agile racing yachts while out at sea.
I mean, their entire infrastructure, from university curriculums to HR departments to those massive office parks, it's designed to mass produce and house millions of junior coders.
Exactly. It is an industrial pipeline built for volume. It is not built to curate a small, elite group of AI orchestration experts. The infrastructure is optimized for a reality that disappeared 6 months ago.
Wow. And the friction of trying to dismantle that volume-based infrastructure while simultaneously trying to build a high-value innovation model, that is the Bhoochal.
It's a violent economic restructuring happening in real time.
And that violently restructuring foundation creates a direct, terrifying link to the final segment we need to cover. Because when the economic foundation shakes, the people most at risk are the youth who are supposed to inherit this booming industry.
This introduces the most urgent element to the reports, the ticking clock of India's demographic structure. Economists have banked on India's demographic dividend for years. They have one of the youngest populations in the world.
Right, and the conventional economic wisdom is that a massive, young, working-age population is an incredible economic booster rocket. As long as you can funnel them into productive jobs, they drive the economy forward.
As long as you can funnel them into jobs. That is the critical variable. And this is where the micro-reality of Chhatni collides with the macro-reality of Bhoochal.
So if AI rapidly wipes out the low-level network and IT jobs, the exact jobs that absorb this influx of youth, then that celebrated demographic dividend instantly flips into a demographic debt.
Yeah, you go from a thriving workforce driving GDP to a structural unemployment crisis involving tens of millions of highly educated, highly frustrated young people.
It becomes a profound social and economic liability.
The sources are incredibly clear on the urgency here. To prevent this demographic debt, the new generation must urgently undergo what the reports call skill remodeling.
So the IT sector has to abandon its reliance on low-end manpower scale and pivot to an intelligence and innovation-driven model with high added value.
Which means these young graduates have to leapfrog the entry-level stage entirely. They have to move from being order takers to high-level system architects.
So what does this all mean? It's like running a generational relay race, but right as you're about to pass the baton to millions of young graduates, AI moves the finish line completely out of sight. I mean, is it even realistic to expect millions of people trained for basic coding to suddenly become high-value innovators overnight?
It's a monumental demand. And it really raises an important question about the limits of human adaptability versus the speed of AI. It is entirely redefining what it means to be an engineer in the modern world.
Because 10 years ago, a good software engineer was someone who had the syntax of a specific coding language perfectly memorized, right? Today, the AI knows the syntax better than any human alive.
So the engineer has to become something entirely different. They have to become a philosopher of logic, someone who understands complex system architecture well enough to ask the AI the exact right series of questions.
The human role shifts entirely from execution to orchestration.
The problem is, how do you teach orchestration at the scale of millions of people? Orchestration requires deep, cross-functional understanding, critical thinking, and usually years of foundational experience.
Experience that they can't get anymore because the entry-level jobs doing the foundational execution are just gone.
Precisely. The educational system and the corporate training infrastructure are stuck in a catch-22. They are trying to teach advanced architectural thinking to students who will never have the opportunity to build the basic building blocks.
And whether India can solve this skill remodeling challenge fast enough to prevent mass structural unemployment is the defining economic question of the decade for them.
Without a doubt.
It is a staggering situation to wrap your head around. Let's take a breath and retrace the path we've mapped out today. We started by looking at the micro pain of Chhatni, the layoffs crushing the middle-class dream as AI absorbs routine cognitive tasks.
Yeah, we saw how the time and materials billing model makes human leverage financially obsolete.
And then we zoomed out to understand how that individual crisis aggregates into Bhoochal, the macroeconomic earthquake threatening a 60% GDP pillar.
Right, where AI acts as a dimensionality reduction attack, shifting the competitive landscape from cheap human labor to compute and energy.
And finally, we looked at the urgent race to turn a demographic dividend into high-value innovation rather than debt. As you listen to this, I really want you to internalize why this matters to you. This isn't just an India story.
Not at all.
It's a mirror for any industry or individual anywhere in the world relying on repetitive tasks and scale. It challenges you to ask yourself, Am I the shovel, or am I the one driving the AI excavator? Because the global market is rapidly deciding that execution is practically free.
If we look at the historical trajectory of global economic development, the traditional ladder for any emerging economy was always the same. You leverage a massive pool of cheap labor to attract foreign capital, build a service base, and use that wealth to construct a middle class.
Right, that was the blueprint.
But if the ultimate destination for cheap, perfectly efficient labor is no longer a developing country with a young population, but a server farm running AI models, how will any emerging economy in the future ever manage to build a middle class? Has artificial intelligence permanently broken the traditional ladder of global economic development?
That is an incredibly heavy, essential question to sit with. The office buildings are still standing and the screens are still glowing, but the underlying mechanics of human value have been permanently rewired. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the systems around you, and we will see you next time.